things that is going on here in the community is with entrepreneurship, as you know, and it's a very active community right now. And I think, just you showing up tonight show that there are great interest, and we're very pleased to have Paul Orfalea here tonight and a very distinguished panel to talk about this, about building your team and basically build your organization. We also have an event coming up in March 21st. So I want you to get your smartphones out and put that in your calendar. It's going to be, excuse me, March 21st, and we're going to do a preview of our new incubator here in Santa Barbara. And that incubator, you may or may not have seen that tonight, but it's going to be up at the Cesar Chavez, just a couple blocks from here. So I would like you to be invited to that, and please show up. I also wanted to introduce Bob Johnson, and he will talk a little bit about some of the things that the MIT Global is doing. And Bob Johnson has been a member of the board for a long time. He is the managing partner and founder of Capital Partners, and he's served on many boards in the community, and he's a great friend of entrepreneurs and so on. He's also an MIT alumni, and he also sits on the board for the MIT Global. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Bob, and then he can talk a little bit about the MIT Enterprise.
Thanks, Peter. So people often ask me, why does MIT do this? And the simple explanation is that MIT, for 151 years now, has had a mission of bringing science and technology to improve, into practical use to improve the state of mankind. Some years ago, there was a survey done by the Kauffman Foundation that had some interesting numbers that indicate sort of the entrepreneurial spirit of the Institute. At that point in time, the alums living at that time, which is about 110,000, had started more than 26,000 companies, which employed nearly 4 million people and generated revenue in excess of $2 trillion, which taken together would have made it the 11th largest economy in the world. So we believe strongly in entrepreneurship. We support it wherever we find it, and it's regardless of what school anybody went to. That's why all these events are always open. So many people think you had to go to MIT to come to these. We've been trying to dispel that point of view for a long time. A couple things that have happened recently. Last June, the Enterprise Forum and Technology Review, which is MIT's magazine on innovation and science, joined forces to essentially get the benefits of working with each other to improve what each are delivering. This new association will bring all 28 chapters around the world a lot of scope and breadth that they did not have in the past. And pretty soon we will be hosting or posting videos from all the chapters of programs that they've done, just like the one we're doing tonight. That'll be there for anyone to watch whenever they want to. And this will be a very nice improvement in availability of what we've been doing. One other thing I would like to say, I'm honored to report that our little MIT Enterprise Forum of the Central Coast will receive the Excellence in Service Award this year from the South Coast Business and Technology Awards Association. We're very proud of that. And as you can see, we're videotaping tonight. This program will be broadcast on Channel 21 a number of times in the next couple of months. To get the broadcast schedule, just go to sbchannels.tv. So now I'd like to introduce Jacques Habra, our moderator for the evening. Jacques has been a director of the Enterprise Forum for more than 5 years. He's a technology entrepreneur and an expert in marketing and marketing communications. Since graduating from the University of Michigan in 1996, Jacques has launched 8 companies and sold 5 of them. In Santa Barbara, he has helped to launch Phone Halo, SB Click, and First Click, and he's as well as the nonprofit Catalyst for Thought. Jacques also contributes to many civic activities and initiatives, currently serves on the Westmount Foundation Board, the Riviera Association Board, and of course our board. And during his time on the board, Jacques has brought to us a number of really great programs. To name just a few, going backwards in time, last year, And the Bandwidth Played On with Andrew Sebald, which was an event with not quite this turnout, but a very big turnout. The convergence of mobile devices in the physical world, all this business of using GPS on your smartphone to check in when you go to a bar, and all these other kinds of things that have been happening. Marketing through social media the year before that, and right in the depths of the subprime meltdown, a program called Still Funding the Web, which focused on where are these little companies going to get money in this environment. So he's had some really thoughtful and deep programs that are still worth watching. We've recorded all these, and later this year you'll be able to go back and see them. I suspect tonight's program will be even more interesting than any of those. So Jacques, the microphone is yours.
All right, good evening. Thank you very much, Bob. And Peter Hartman, our chair, echoed this, and I'd like to repeat it. I mean, it is an amazing board that we have here at the MIT Enterprise Forum that put an event on like this on together tonight. It's a great teamwork effort, so my thanks to them, and I'd like everybody please to join me in thanking the entire board. Tonight's program is called Effective Startup Management. It features Paul Orfalea, Kathy Odell, Jason Womack, and Joe Brusace. And why are we talking about effective startup management? Why is that a relevant topic? Experts in the field of economics, political science, research believe that startups will be one of the critical factors in America's resurgence economically. For those of you that caught the State of the Union that President Obama gave a few months ago, he mentioned the Startup Act. Show of hands, how many people are familiar with the Startup Act? Not too many. The Kauffman Foundation introduced it last year, and he's behind the act, and it looks like it's going to actually get passed. Unlike many things, it's getting bipartisan support, which is great. But it basically aims to provide funding and leadership support for startups, which is what we need, because startups today, they need all the help they can get. According to CNN, 60% of startup businesses fail within the first year, and a whopping 85% fail within 5 years. If you ask Harvard Business School, they're going to tell you even more disheartening stats. 95% of startups fail within 5 years. So the takeaway is that the United States does depend on startups, small businesses, for job creation and to fuel the economy. It makes a lot of sense, right? If startups have success, if they're doing well, they're going to have better profit margins, give a rate of return to their investors, hire more people, and so on and so forth. Who knows, you might end up with a 25,000 person company like Kinko's. In a nutshell, our intention and goal tonight is to impart to everybody here what best practices startup entrepreneurs should implement in their companies and their startups. And hopefully you'll take that and continue to thrive and help America come back strong economically, stay strong. We have an esteemed panel of experts tonight, entrepreneurs who have launched and managed startups through ups and downs in a wide range of industries. Each of our panelists, they've mentored entrepreneurs, which is a big part of startup success. And we'll get to know each of them shortly. But first, we have the distinct honor to get to know Mr. Paul Orfalea, the inspirational founder of Kinko's and the Orfalea Foundation. In 1970, some 42 years ago, Paul started Kinko's. He saw a similar copy operation at USC, and he thought, this kind of thing should be on every college campus in America. So he came up to UCSB. I think he had a girlfriend going to UCSB at the time. And he set up his first Kinko's operation. And get this, the space was so small that they actually had to roll the copy machine out on the sidewalk to make copies. The first Kinko's was really just a grain of sand in what ended up happening. Within 10 years, they had 80 stores. Paul continued to innovate and improve on best practices with things like 24-hour service. That's one of Paul's things, opening 24 hours a day. And it led to more than 1,200 locations, as I mentioned, about 25,000 employees in 10 countries. Along the way, in 2000, Paul founded the Orfalea Family Foundation, focused on philanthropy, and also in 2000 launched West Coast Asset Management, an investment advisory firm. In 2004, FedEx acquired Kinko's for an undisclosed sum, though I've always wondered if they also acquired the real estate that was attached to Kinko's. I'll have to ask that at some point. Today, Paul educates students on business and entrepreneurship and continues to develop the Orfalea Foundation. So let's fill in the blanks in that quick story. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Paul Orfalea. You guys are going to hear me talk a little bit tonight, but I'd like to have a couple of our distinguished audience members ask the first questions, if that's okay with you, Paul.
Please.
Is Larry Crandell in the audience? Mr. Santa Barbara? There he is. For those of you that don't know Larry, and that would be amazing if you don't know Larry, he has helped raise over $250 million for non-for-profits in this region.
Jacques and I would like to announce our engagement. Paul, the story of your having overcome dyslexia and attention deficit and other problems is now history. Your financial success is international. But to me, you're still in your prime, and my question is, what are you going to do for the next 20 years?
I know exactly what I want to do. Wake up in the morning with only what I want to think about in the morning. Not worrying, just having a good night's sleep and just waking up with just cool thoughts. Because I don't know, all those years I was in business, every morning I was worried. And when I had my own business back then, I had 3 bad things going on. I had bad gas. Now I have no gas. I never slept. Now I sleep. My neck always hurt, and now my neck doesn't hurt. You think it had something to do with stress? So what I like about life is waking up every morning with just a cool, clean slate of something to think about. And the world is so interesting. I don't find anything hard to, it's just a very interesting planet. I actually don't want to leave it because I want to find out how it all ends up.
Thanks, Paul. And we have another distinguished guest in the audience, Mayor Helene Schneider. She's got our second question for you.
Thank you, and what a great crowd. Congratulations. First, to thank you for all your philanthropic work. It does a great service to our city and elsewhere. My question is, when was the moment, going back to when you started Kinko's, when you knew you were going to become an international superstar?
When I cashed the check. No, I was under so much financial pressure, I never felt good. And one time, 1990, I was doing well, man. We had a good back to school. I'm driving to Santa Barbara, I'm thinking, oh, I'm really doing well. I was starting to take myself seriously. The next day, the entire publishing industry sued me. And do you remember how they had World War II and Germany invaded Poland? We were sort of like Poland. They got wiped. So so I'd never been able to take myself seriously, but I remember cashing the check and getting out all that financial pressure. Because we were a private business. They're subchapter S's. And we never took outside money. It would have been nice, but we never had any. But I'll tell you the big secret. I know you all want to start your business. Subchapter S, LLC. Keep it from the tax man. And I could give you more about accounting, what you want to do in accounting when you start your business if someone asked me that.
Well, we're going to need a lot more of those secrets tonight. Let's jump into it. You described once effective management, simply the role of a manager is to remove obstacles. What does that mean exactly?
I was thinking about that today. In organizational behavior, you have theory X and theory Y. I guess you guys are all in the technology business, and you have to end with a product without defects. So your tolerance for mistakes is probably zero. It's sort of like a nuclear power plant. You don't want people going to work every day and say, let's be creative here and push new buttons. My business, a mistake didn't cost me anything. I can't imagine anybody making a decision I could bet my business on. In fact, I encouraged mistakes because they were, you could just repeat the job, do it over again, and it wasn't a punitive organization. So it depends on the organization you're running. If you want to use autocratic procedures or theory Y procedures, if you're running a bunch of engineers and creative people, it's sort of like herding a bunch of cats, but then you got to move these people in a direction and say, I want this end product to work on the internet. I mean, I would think that would be a perplexing problem. I don't have it, but I'm sure you do. Mine was very easy. Our business was very easy to motivate people because you're all patrons of our business, Kinko's. You're psychologically, you don't know what the hell you want, you're uptight, and you're confused. You don't know what the hell you want it yesterday. You walk in, you say, wow, there's a lot of machines in here. And you go to yourself, you go to the counter, and the worker can suggest to a bank president, say, I think I could look, and the worker's a 16-year-old kid, 17-year-old. The worker sees the manufacturing process and gets the thank you from the customer. Then they can see the relationship of their work to planet Earth. They help people get jobs. They help somebody make a sales call. In Spokane, Washington, there was an abducted little girl. And the family went to the police department first. They went to us second to do the posters. If you think of the connection to planet Earth, I didn't have to do much to motivate those people. All I had to do was get the hell out of the way. So when I say management is to remove obstacles, I really mean that.
In the first few years, when you got this operation going here at UCSB, were you hiring people
Yeah.
like crazy?
No, I was just hiring people. My first theory was ugly women work harder.
Ouch.
I was wrong on that one. Then I went for very, very, should I say that?
No, say whatever you want.
That was wrong. Then I had a theory that very, very ultra-religious people work very, very hard. That was wrong. Just give me a Republican or a Democrat with just normal people.
Right.
And I could motivate them.
What about your first executive hire? First person you really put in charge and...
I was always hiring exec. I mean, from the very first store, I was going back and forth to USC, and I only worked Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. And I was always wondering, why does everybody come with a problem to me Tuesday and Thursday morning? And they said, all the workers would say, well, the manager's there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I thought, that must be the manager. Then after 3 months, I got a manager. Wasn't he an executive or she an executive? I've been managing executives my whole life. I've been operating my life as an owner. And I'll tell you, there's such a big difference between being the owner and management. The main thing is an owner points fingers. And I don't think people take their jobs too seriously as an owner, but there's a completely different function of an owner and a manager.
But you had to hire the manager. You had to evaluate them.
I had to like them. You know how I used to do it? In the Catholic Church, there is a saying, in vito veritas, in wine there is truth. So I'd take them out drinking, and I'd like to see how nice they were to waiters and waitresses. That made a big difference to me. I'd like to see how they handle themselves with liquor. And one of the main questions I'd always ask them is, how did you get along with your parents? And if they didn't get along with their parents, they didn't go home for Christmas or the holidays, I'd say, well, this is kind of a weird person. I'm not working with them. So, but if you like your parents, you're probably get along with me.
Probably. So take us back to the early 70s with Kinko's. You know, you had a few stores going, right? Things were going well. You were traveling around, meeting with people because there was no email at the time, and you probably wouldn't have used it anyways.
No, not like that.
Yeah. So you were doing your physical inspections, looking at your monthly reports, right? And at what point did it occur to you that why isn't somebody else doing this?
I always had that theory.
You know?
Wait, now from day one, I know how to get out of work. From day one, I got out of work. My whole job is getting out of work. I'm one of the world's experts at getting out of responsibility. No, really, I'm not a very capable person. I can't read very well. I can't spell. I'm very restless. I can't sit still. I'm not mechanical. I never knew how to run the machines. I'm lucky. I could look at anybody and say, well, you're more capable than me. Isn't that true? Isn't anybody else? I would always say anybody else can do it better, and I'm right. Anybody else can do it better than me. So I never had a problem giving it authority and responsibility because I wasn't capable enough to do it. It's an advantage.
So, but you're really talking about knowing yourself as an entrepreneur, as a person. You know, understanding your own limitations, things you're good at, things you're not good at.
I didn't know that then. I just knew I didn't like to work. And I hated the stores. I didn't like being in those stores. I found them very hectic. I didn't know how to run the machines that well. I would, you know, like for this machine, they call it the velo binding or something, spiral binding. I'd go punch the holes, and I'd say, well, God, I punched all the holes. Did I put the paper this way last time or this way? I'd get confused. I couldn't even do that capably. No, that's not my thing. I was very good at getting out of work.
Yeah, but somehow, despite all that, it grew.
Well, it grew, and you want to get my accounting exercise?
Yeah.
Most people fail in business because they don't have an envelope. I want to tell you all, throw away that stupid computer of yours. You do one thing. You write on the back of an envelope your cash flow, and if you don't know what is an envelope item, you got problems. And you'd better know your business in an envelope, not a computer. It used to baffle the hell out of me. People would project 12 years out their cash. Bull.
Did you know your cash flow?
I did it. I always was
every
obsessed.
store.
Every store. I knew every damn cash flow there was. I just loved cash flow. If you don't know your cash, and if you want, I'll give you a little saying. If you want to fly to financial heaven, you have to have the fuel to get there. Most people fail because they're undercapitalized and they don't realize the capital they'll need in the future and make contingency plans. I'll tell you, that was my favorite part of the business. I kept my business private for 30 years, and I knew my cash due. And every summer I'm broke, stressed out like crazy. Students are all gone. I'm just spending money like water, and it was very rough. It's tough. But somehow the students came back, and I was able to make a living. But really know your cash.
Yeah.
Pay your bills. I can't emphasize the importance of shaking someone's hand and paying your bills. I used to deal with this guy up the street here. He'd always pay me in 90 days. I had a print shop. I always charged him 5-10% more. Everybody did because he was slow pay. But know your cash and know it in an envelope. And my second exercise is I will inevitably ask every one of you, what is your variable cost? No one gets it right. Your cost of goods sold and your mental thing is, what does it cost me to do one more unit? Not average cost. What is my marginal cost? Are you writing that down? That's not that astounding. But no, most people do their chart of accounts wrong, and they do not do their cost of goods sold correctly. Remember, it's variable cost. And where I learned that, my father manufactured women's clothes. And I don't know why this is actually even helping my point. So he would manufacture it, and over time, the value of the inventory went down.
Right.
So it was worth what it was worth, and he couldn't look at his cost or his variable cost. It was a week after he manufactured work less than he manufactured it. And he would always say, he'd always fight with Uncle. He would give credit to anybody because he would have something deteriorating in value, and he'd say, well, look, I'll take a 50% chance to sell to this guy to pay me something rather than have it sit on my shelf and get nothing. So I was raised in a family of merchants, and I was always raised with parables of money. And you know what? We're Lebanese.
We
So
are.
somebody else Lebanese here. Do you know anybody that has a job as a Lebanese person?
It's my father. My
I
dad's
never
the
knew
only
a
one on
soul.
earth.
I never knew a soul that had a job. Everybody had their own business. My mother would always say, you know, you work for other people, you're only as good as yesterday's paycheck. And it was true. And I was raised where there were only 2 S's in my life, and school wasn't one of them. It was saving your money and getting a good night's sleep. That was the value of everything. Honey, whatever it takes, get a good night's sleep. Yeah.
All right, at 80 stores, approximately what was the revenue? What was the annual revenue? 10 years in.
Oh, I remember it was 10 years. I don't. Stores. I thought we did about maybe 700,000 unit. No, not even that. I'd say 60,000 times 4.85 million.
Okay.
But the most important growth we had is it was like this. We didn't grow in stores. Our stores went wider. So it wasn't the number of locations. It was breadth of services. Mm-hmm. So, for an example, I argued that the Hope Avenue store we should open the downtown Santa Barbara store, for an example, because I wanted to have all the array of services open 24 hours a day that was accessible. And the marginal revenue I got from that store, if I got 50% of the revenue from the downtown store back in the Hope Avenue store, I'd make more money. So I was arguing for less locations, and I kept thinking as we grew, it wasn't as much convenience, but people came for a breadth of services.
So this entire time, you're not thinking exit strategy.
I'm always thinking exit strategy.
You always are?
Everything was for sale all my life, yeah.
Okay. I mean, and you know, this is where I'm learning, but I would think that more locations would increase the overall
Yeah,
value
I
of the
could, but
company.
if somebody wanted to buy me, I would have taken it all along, yeah.
Okay.
I'm in business. I'm not in. You think I don't like to read? Why in the hell will I care about Xerox copies? It just didn't interest me. I don't.
It was a commodity.
I mean, what do I say? Oh yeah, let's go out and make a nice copy today. It just didn't turn me on.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about how that all started, because you were taking care of the people that were taking care of the term papers for you, right?
No, I made a group. I can't read very well. I made a deal with this group at USC. If they wrote the paper, I'd make sure I was going to get the pizza pie and the Coca-Cola for them and all that. So they Xeroxed this. They made this big thing, and I made copies. So I went to this place at USC, and what do I see? People in line. Oh, that might be an indication of something good. So I saw them all in line, and I thought, well, if they're Xeroxing at USC, why would the same people Xerox at Santa Barbara? What? I mean, did you have to take a lot of psychedelics to figure that one out? So I just copied the guy at at USC, and I did some improvements. It's always the pioneers, the first people on the block always have arrows in their back. It's the second people that make the money. Mm-hmm. You can see what they did, and you go across the street and do it better. In my whole life, I never liked my business enough that I was always never seduced by that business. I was always the guy across the street looking in, saying to myself, how can I wipe myself out of business? And I was always paranoid. Mm-hmm. By the way, you know what a paranoid is?
What is it?
They go to a football game and they sit in the top row of general admission, and when the players go in a huddle, he thinks they're talking about him.
What's that you say about in your 20s you worry about what
My
people...
mom told me that.
You worry about what people think about you?
Oh, that was another one. Yeah.
And then by the time you're 60...
Yeah. I have 2 of those.
Yeah.
Bob Hope said, in your 20s, you care what people think about you. When you get to be 40, you don't really care what people think about you. Then you get to be 60, you realize no one ever thought of you in the first place. And then my mother told me a lot of wisdom at this way. In your 20s, everything was honey. Honey, in your 20s, try everything. 30s, start figuring out what you do best. 40s, make money for what you do best. In your 50s, don't do too much. And I followed her advice. And I had these two uncles, Uncle Emil and Uncle Nick. They came back from the war, they bought the bar, and then they started saving their money, they had real estate. In their 50s, my mother would say, you want to end up like them. Their biggest decision every day was, where am I going to go eat lunch? Now, wouldn't that be a nice way to go through your 50s and 60s? Where am I going to have a lunch today? Oh, I feel like whatever. That's a nice decision.
But you had to show up. You were showing up at the
No,
stores.
no.
Yeah, you because you even said you were innovating and building on other people's the good things you found in the stores. So you had to make visits to the stores.
Let me try this again. That business ran absolutely beautifully without me. And I defined my job as whatever I did, I made it better. So I never gave myself too much responsibility. At most, I would have my weekly work I had to do, maybe 6 hours of correspondence. I finally got rid of that. I told people how to write my letters for me. And as it got bigger, everybody did stuff. There was all special, store burned down, they figured it out. Phone calls, I got out of phone calls. I found such a waste of time, phone calls. First of all, I had 7 stores, and the manager called me up, and he said, Paul, I got a bounced check. What do I do? And I thought, what do? You go after the guy with your check. You called me for that. So I became inaccessible. I do my phone calls on Tuesdays. Somehow the problems weren't so big. Figured it out. It's not that confusing in business, especially my business. Balance your checkbook, understand where your customers are going, and motivate your workers. That's all I really focused on. A lot of people get the hocus pocus, all this nonsense, but that's really all I did. But I really didn't over-delegate myself. I didn't have the temperament to work hard. In my entire career, if I went to that office, I'd have a good breakfast. I tried to get there sometimes at 8 so I could show a good example, never could. I'd work 4 days till 4 o'clock, and by the end of the 4th day, I'm like this nervous. I don't have the temperament for phone calls and meetings and interruptions. And I don't believe in open door. I believe in a closed door. You come in there better be a good reason to bother me. I had
Did you shut down any stores in the first 10 years?
Yeah.
How many, approximately?
The one at Loyola.
It just wasn't making money?
No, it's always management. No.
Tell us
We
about
always
that.
had 99% of our stores were the morale of the manager. It wasn't the location. Looking back, a good manager can make a bad store good, but generally it's always manager. And that's what I focused all my time on, the morale of the managers. And I was really mean, I think, to the head office and the executives. I could have gone back and been nicer. But if you weren't ringing a register, I didn't look as fondly on you as I should have. I like the people ringing those little registers, those little happy fingers with my best friends. Happy fingers, happy registers. Let me give you an example. You all are big shots in this room, right? You think you're the owners of the business? Let me give you a little story. Have you ever had a job where someone mistreated you? What'd you do to them? You hit them back, right? Who's got the last laugh? The boss? Didn't you go like this? Somebody mistreated you, and then you just always hit the boss harder, right? Now what can a worker do to you? They can steal from you, fudge in their hours, give bad customer service, and you think you're the owner? Let's think this again. Now, you can go like this with your workers, or like this. I went like this, and I got the happy fingers. It's not that complicated.
And you did that. You had a lot of development of your culture.
Yeah.
Parties, events. You posted photos. Liquor. And Vino Veritas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you posted photos. That was one of your techniques.
Posted where?
You posted photos in the executive offices of the fun
stores.
times. Yeah.
No, because what I wanted. How did you know that? Was that in the book?
I've done my research.
Oh. No, I wanted the head office to be connected to our work. So I wanted people to see people in the stores doing things. And I had a big fight with everybody. I wanted a bunch of photos so that the head office knew the purpose of what we were doing. Because I couldn't get that sense of purpose from the person, in the receivables department, to feel the commitment, because they're just opening envelopes and they're depositing checks, which was kind of cool. And posting to the account. That was my favorite department, actually. But I think it's so,
I'm trying to visualize. I can see the organic and instinctive character that led to a $6 million business. I understand that, but from going from 6 to 60 million, let's say,
sorry.
didn't you have to have structure, HR systems?
I hated that HR.
Yeah. But it was there.
It just got infested with the organization. I remember do you want to hear? We have two questions.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to the HR one in a second. The hardest thing I think you have to manage is 2 or 3 stores, because you don't know where to go. And every time the owner went in the store, or a management position, they undermined the morale of that manager. And then I plotted later on our business. The farther away the store was from management, the better it did. So, when I had a bookkeeper, and she said, you're losing your effectiveness. You're calling your people too often. I didn't know what the hell to do at 7 stores. I was always in the stores. But really, they listen to you better if you don't talk to them that much. Occasionally they didn't listen to me for anything anyway, but occasionally they might listen if I didn't talk to them that often. Mm-hmm. And what was the second part of the question?
I'm just thinking.
There's zones. There's always zones of inefficiency.
Okay.
For an example, when I had my first store, I would dump the garbage in the trash can in the apartment building next door. As I got bigger, I couldn't have a manager do that, so I had to pay for the trash can. But as you get bigger, your economies of scale at 1 store are different than 8. 8, you have to, somehow you're not viable at 5. 8 was a critical zone. Then I thought 20, 50, 200, 800, you were too big to be small or too small to be big. It's sort of like a hotel with 30 rooms. You don't see it because it's too much for mom and pop and not enough for economies of scale. Those are critical zones I found in our business. And that seemed like in corresponding sales, it was 10 million, 50 million, 200 million, 800 million. Those are just zones of problem areas.
Mm-hmm. Those are critical areas in any business to identify where there's inefficiency, where there's losses.
No, because you need a certain overhead level to go to the next level, and you've got to build it a little bit, and it's just not viable. You've got too much central office for the number of locations. Mm-hmm. And they're just critical zones you got to be aware of. And there's all different economies of scale at different zones.
And when you didn't have to-do lists, I know this.
I listed. I was a listaholic.
You had lists?
Always.
Okay. How did they come? How did you create them?
No.
Where'd they come from?
I learned from my father. Okay, here's how I did it. I'd always leave for 3 weeks, the head office. I took a vacation, I did whatever. You go away for 3 weeks. The first week, you come back, you got 2 weeks of work. You come back the second week, you got 1 week of work. The third week, they all figured it out for themselves, they don't need you anymore. So I would always leave for 3 weeks because I really wanted to wean people from me. My whole job was to get people out, away from So then I would come back, and I noticed my father had a business, and he told me that the mundane is like a cancer. It'll totally absorb you. You've got to make your priorities and do your big list. I got this from him. Do your priorities after the 3 weeks, and then so I'd always start after the 3-week trip. I'd go back to the headquarters. I'd wander around every job. I'd stay home for a day. I'd make my list. Then I would start with the important things I really want to accomplish. Like say, this is a year for connectivity. I wanted the Xerox machines to talk to the computers. That was a good story too. you got these computer people. They got that different language. I'd say, look, I want the Xerox machine to talk to the computers. Oh, it's the AS, synchronous 230, 240, 864. And I was all these words I didn't understand. I just said, I just want the machines to talk to each other. But you can always tell the computer people, they have their own special language. You just want to think simple. Like, I think this word technology is a bunch of nonsense. Really, it's like saying, do I have a transportation vehicle, or is it the technology that got me in this vehicle? Technology is just giving simple needs to complex problems. I don't know why you'd call it technology. It's because you use a computer and you use machines. It just seems like you're solving complicated things with easy solutions, like this mouse. That's not technology. It was just a simple solution to accessing information. But technology is a way to camouflage. It's sort of like all these, I don't know, it's a fancy word. I don't know what it means.
Yeah. And instead of printing out photos and putting them of your stores, now people post them on Facebook
Yeah.
and share it that way.
Well, so that's just sharing. I
Same
don't know.
concept.
Technology is just a good way of getting the investors to invest with you. I don't know what the hell it means. I'm in the technology business. Oh, okay, that's cool.
Well, when you connected the computer to the
I'm a
copy
planet
machine-
Earth. I breathe oxygen. I'm in the oxygen business.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Let's go into business and sell air. Let's do it. You call ADHD, dyslexia learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Oh, you see the world different. Allegedly, I see the world different. I don't even know how I see the world. I think you guys think it's screwed up. Look at it screwed up. But I'm allegedly, because I can't read well, I always felt stupid, but then I figured out my 50th birthday, I wasn't that stupid. But everybody I knew, my brother, my sister, my parents were all readers. And everybody did. They'd always have these books and they could entertain themselves for hours at a time reading. I couldn't do it. So I learned to live with my eyes, and I guess I got conversational skills.
And you're a people person.
Yeah. But I want to tell you the story I was going to tell you about the HR department. I forgot that. So the HR department is bragging one day, oh, Paul, we got 0 lawsuits last year from the HR.
Right.
You think they're going to get a compliment from me? No. I said, what are you keeping so many deadbeats in these stores for? I want a tolerable amount of lawsuits. That means I want you getting rid of deadbeats. I mean, if you don't fire anybody, you're not going to have lawsuits. But I want you to emancipate our people to fire the deadbeats. Would you think you're going to get a compliment from Paul? It wasn't that way.
Yeah. So you trusted people a lot.
I had no choice. What choice do I have? I can't do things very capably myself. Why wouldn't I obviously trust people?
You had a good track record of hiring. You didn't
No.
fire that much?
No. I managed the culture. I didn't manage people. I don't know how many people I really hired. People got hired and they hired their friends and hired people. I only maybe did a few hires.
What were some of the
And
tenets
I want
of
to
that
tell you a
culture?
damn thing I never did. I never went below the big shot. In other words, if this executive wanted to hire somebody, I would never say, well, I want you to hire this guy. In fact, it would be the kiss of death. I'd say, well, I like this guy. Could you hire him? Then they would think, oh, this guy's going to go narc to Paul. I'm not hiring him. He's Paul's friend. There'd be the kiss of death if I recommended somebody in that organization.
But you said you managed the culture.
Yeah.
And what were the tenets of the culture? What did you really want to see? What did you want to feel?
Well, I had an aptitude to be a social worker, and I felt guilty having possessions, and so we had very good health insurance, and we had a pension plan. I had daycare at the headquarters. And one of the things y'all ought to try in your business. First of all, my parents had their own business. After Mama and Dada, it was, honey, it's deductible. So we got this thing a charity where you got the money tax deductible going in, and it went to the workers' children tax free. and it was top-stopped at a certain amount of income level, so the executives couldn't take advantage of it. It was a great deal. I couldn't take it, and we did that, and I would feel guilty a little bit about having something and knowing that the workers' kids were sick or didn't have dental care. I just didn't think it meant that much that I could have another acre in my home or any of this nonsense. I mean, I didn't want the guilt. But I think you have to care for your people, and it's a two-way street. I really generally cared about their well-being, and it was, I finally couldn't take it at my 50th birthday. I didn't like the responsibility. You know, it's kind of cool when you're young, responsibility. When you're old, it becomes a burden. And most people don't recognize the responsibility burden gap, and I got burdened. I didn't like the burden. I'm basically a screw-up. Why would I have all this 25,000 workers? I like practical jokes. I like laughing and giggling.
That's what's so
And
fascinating.
I like drinking, and I like ha 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 ha.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that a lot of people in the audience, they feel like the only way that they have a fighting chance is to raise capital.
Yeah.
And doing it organically is just not an option. And on the other hand, you did it completely organically, never brought in outside capital.
Never.
And this is
Well, I
This
dealt
is
with this
strange.
really wonderful company called Xerox. They were so screwed up they'd never bill me. So I'd get these stupid Xerox, but everybody asked me why I opened new locations. I got like 90 days free from Xerox before I got a bill. I got paper vendors giving me 30 days credit. I got the workers giving me 2 weeks free work. And all I had to do was build a cabinet plugged in a stupid little Xerox machine. I made money the first month. So I didn't have to cost me money to open locations as it did as we got bigger.
back to cash flow.
I mean, it didn't cost me anything to open these stores. It was wonderful cash flow. So, and then the government was better in the Democrat days than this Republican days for taxes. Ronald Reagan comes in, it's time I have to pay the taxes. When Carter was there, I got the investment tax credit, I got the jobs credits, I got this credit, that credit. They didn't have the alternative minimum tax. It was wonderful. Then Reagan comes in, lowering everybody's taxes but me.
I don't know why I keep looking at this. I stopped following it 10 minutes ago. So, what point in the development of Kinko's did you really believe this was going to be a household name?
Never.
Never
Took it seriously. I just always was paranoid. And I would tell you guys are very important. You know these, I don't know why I should know this as a D student at school, but you know the Venn diagrams?
Yeah.
There's these Venn diagrams. More males than females. These Venn diagrams overlap. Who they are and who their business is exactly overlapped. I get my definition from my career. I was very lucky, maybe because of my family background. There was Paul and there was Kinko's, and I really did not want those circles overlapping. And you make much better decisions on your life if you own that, it doesn't own you. You own that business as an instrument to make you happy. When it ceases to make you happy, sell that business. And most people don't ever realize that business is you own it. You can't be the slave to it. And so I was always had this detached view, but also having that detached view, I was always paranoid. And I tell you, I was always, all night long, worrying. And I'd imagine, and I remember these I called the guy up when CopyMax opened up. They did exactly what I was most worried about in Cleveland. They opened up like over here, a freestanding store in front of their location. And I called the guy up and I said, tell me about this store. And he was, and I said, are you worried about this? He goes, oh no. And I said, I'm worried about it. Why can't you be worried about it? So, but I fantasized exactly what they did. And what always baffled me is, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Do you remember, I did study in school. I got two things I learned from my business school, but do you remember pure competition in microeconomics? easy entry and exit from the market, a homogeneous product, and price is the reason you buy. Here I am making Xerox copies. Same damn Xerox copies everybody has. Price is the reason you bought it, and you can always get a Xerox machine. Isn't that the definition of pure competition? Here I'm dealing with a government institution at UCSB that has better contracts, government subsidized labor, and free rent. I go, oh wow, I gotta compete with these people. I outfoxed them. And I was always baffled. I'm opening up in all these universities. All the customers could see how many people I have in line. All my workers know how much money I was taking in. Why didn't I get more competition?
That's a good question.
And it just, when it was your grandparents' generation, they would have said, wow, I think there's something over there. But nowadays, you guys want the business suits and this highfalutin jobs and the computers. And hell, you know who's got more sense is the drug dealers. hustling and knowing rejection and doing something illegal. I'm serious. You guys all want this, like, if I had to do it over again, what I would do, I'd get a red wagon right over here.
A red what?
Wagon. You know, a little red.
A wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd get a bunch of coffee. And on Sunday mornings, I'd go down with a bunch of little coffee cups and have my little wagon. And sell cups of coffee for $3. All these people setting up their little art things. Wouldn't they buy a cup of coffee for $3? You got the. Nobody thinks of hustling like that.
There's a van that does that in town. It's a mobile cafe. They come to your place of work and they, thanks Bob, and they set up shop for you and they give you espressos and cappuccinos and everything. They got the whole thing. Now they've got the food trucks are very popular now. You know, the food trucks, they bring the entire Mediterranean or Chinese or Indian experience right to your house.
Why don't you take your red wagon when they're drinking on Thursday and Friday nights downtown, the UCSB students? Get a little red wagon. The police would love to see you.
With like water? Or
No, you sell the coffee.
Oh, the coffee, yeah.
Espresso and just coffee. Say, before you go home, why don't you have a cup of coffee so you'll drive safely?
Yeah, they'll be alert when they're arrested.
I mean, couldn't you hustle a bunch of coffee? But everybody wants the highfalutin jobs. And to me, I look at all that. I look at these people paying with the paychecks. I go, what the hell? I work at Starbucks. I get $9 an hour, and they get $6 an hour for me. It's no way to make money. Working for it, getting a paycheck. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
I just never saw. I got a paycheck in my life. And I remember I sold my business, and they were supposed to give me a paycheck of this much, and I kept looking at the check going, what seems to be wrong with this picture? I was supposed to be getting this much money. It just never seemed like enough as I was supposed to get paid. I never maybe you can tell I never aspired for paychecks.
how did you decide when to increase salaries for your people?
I didn't do that.
You didn't deal with any of it?
No, my philosophy was lots of profit sharing. So we had people addicted to profit sharing. I had every manager, every worker in profit sharing. But I didn't find the compensation thing very interesting. But I worked with people that found it interesting. But I never really asked what people made.
We're going to get a few questions from the audience, and then we're going to introduce Jason, Kathy, and Joe, get them up here to join us and keep talking.
Oh, I get to stay on stage?
Absolutely.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So does anyone here have a question for Paul? And I'm going to repeat the question for the television audience. How did you take the name Kinko's and turn it into such an international brand, the word Kinko's? Right. You know the history of the Kinko's? The word? Oh, yeah.
Oh, I have kinky hair, and my nickname was Kinko. But before I was Kinko, my nickname was Pube Head. So,
you could have taken that in a lot of directions.
Yeah. But if you remember Kodak, Xerox, Google, you always remember strong consonants. So it happened to be a good name. But I found this kid at USC. He repairs iPhones for $100. It takes him 15 minutes. He's really good at it. And he has a little, on the street thing.
They repair cracked iPhones, like when they break the glass.
Oh, we thought that was a little guy, some guy just doing his own business.
That would be us.
Oh, do you own the business? No. That's good. Why don't you give him some equity? He looks like a good guy.
You had a question here, Grant?
Yeah, Paul, my name's Grant. I understand
There's a microphone here for you.
history that you used to be very good at seeing opportunities. I understand you were very good at seeing opportunities in the daily newspaper. Things that seem bad to most people, occasionally you could find golden gems of wisdom to find new business opportunities. Could you expand on that?
Okay. I've got a kind of long answer. Most adults are either in the past or the future, and more women than men. It takes a lot more thought process to be a woman than a man. It just does. Cognitively, it takes more mental ability to be. And women, I think, aren't in the moment as much as men can be. And that doesn't mean they are. But it really is very important to be aware in the moment of what you're seeing. And I always had the ability to be in the moment and observing. And if you're not pressed with a lot of thoughts from, like how the mayor wakes up every day with lots of things to think about, you don't see, I'm sure you won't see the opportunities out there. There are so many opportunities. But I remember, I always read the New York Times obituaries. And this guy owned the Hollywood Wax Museum. And he did $4 million a year. And I saw how wide that thing was. $4 million a year. What did that tell you? Hollywood Boulevard is just begging for tourist business. It told you to go in the wax museum business. It told you a lot. It was screaming success. Now, we all think in this country, because we like to be so proud of our country, that the atomic bomb was given away by these vicious spies at Alamogordo, New Mexico. I don't want to break your heart and tell you you're wrong, Americans. It was given away because it exploded. If it exploded, we told the world we got some bomb that really works here. How many times you go down the street and say, wow, there's a lot of success here. Why are they in line there? What's the critical success factor? You're always thinking, why are they successful? Now, you have two narratives as an adult to raise children. And I'm sure that there's something about adults that is troublesome. As an adult, you're not as strong physically and you have more possessions to defend. So you view the world very scary. And you're very defensive. And you always look at Fox News and the world is so dysfunctional, bad. But really the world is exciting. It's never been better. It's more curious than it's ever been. There's more integrity in the world than there ever has been. The world is got fraught with opportunity. But if you raise your children with, now, you're a 20-year-old, you have two choices. You can become an alcoholic and disengage because, self-fulfilling prophecy. It's all going to go to hell in a handbasket. Or, it's a kind of a cool place. I want to be engaged in the planet. You have two narratives as an adult. You better get the exciting one. Why is it that we stop at red lights and go on green lights? Why is it that we have just enough oxygen that the place doesn't explode with too much volatile chemicals in the atmosphere? Why is it that we have this tide, all that ocean comes up so predictably every day, all that matter out there? I mean, the whole place is just interesting. Why is it that the DNA, or they're getting to get this, where they can realign electrons with this nanotechnology? I mean, come on, this is a very interesting planet. But how many of us are cultivating curiosity with our children? And one of the bad things this horrible George Bush did was and Ted Kennedy, no child left behind. We've taken curiosity out of education. We're cramming the alphabet down kindergartners' back. We're not letting them play. We're not letting them go out barefoot. Curiosity, that's the only time we're not going to out-memorize the Chinese and the Indians. Sorry. We're going to outthink them and create them. I mean, to take childhood away from children, the sense of wonder, the sense of why, the sense of intrigue, so they can pass a standardized test, and these analyzers, I'm not talking analyzers, analyzers. Whatever you do with data, you're always going to want it better. So these analyzers got a hold of education. They say, we're not content now till they know the alphabet before they go to kindergarten. When are they going to be content? You got to know the alphabet in the womb, some sort of genetic. Give them a break. Let them sleep. We're taking sleep, the most critical component of learning, out of childhood. And I just think I think I was raised with so much curiosity. My dad and mom never cared about school. She motivated us all to go to college because it was fun. And my brother was studying at 9:30 at night once, and my dad walked in the room and said, "What are you doing?" And my brother said, "I'm studying for a test." And my dad said, "You'll never remember it, so what's the good of learning it?" We always had interesting conversations at my home. I couldn't wait to enter the adult conversations with my uncles and aunts and all that. It was just an interesting family dynamic. Now, one of the things we do is I'll ask you guys this question. If your 5-year-old comes with a painting from school, what do you say to him? What do you say? You. Absolutely the worst thing you could say. I don't want to break your heart and tell you that. Because by telling a child it's good, they learn to please others rather than please themselves. What you want to do is say to the child, "Tell me about the painting and why did you do it?" My supposition is these parents nowadays are making a bunch of people pleasers. They're not independent thinkers. They want to be measured by others rather than measuring their own self-esteem.
Paul, this ties into how you define success in a nutshell. Not the money, not the number of stores, not the sales, not the value of your company, but by...
Your children want to be with you when they're adults.
That's
I
it.
mean, how would you have all this money and your kids reject you on Christmas? Come on. Does that make sense? Don't you have to market to them?
Well, I'm going to introduce each of the three panelists. Please hold your applause until all three are up, if you would come up one at a time. Kathy Odell. Kathy is a serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of leadership experience in high-growth technology companies. She is president currently of Innovium Products, which is a fitness equipment company based here in Santa Barbara. Prior, she was the CEO of Inogen and a founding CEO of Inogen, a manufacturer of advanced oxygen therapy devices for treatment of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. She helped attract $53 million in capital with Inogen. Kathy began her entrepreneurial career more than 30 years ago. She's been very involved at a mentorship level with various organizations in town here. Prior to the last few entrepreneurial ventures, she was actually the director of Pacific Capital Bancorp since 1999. And she's received numerous accolades in entrepreneurship and leadership, including Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Award for the Greater Los Angeles area, the Venki Award for Entrepreneurial Leadership, presented by UCSB, and Entrepreneur of the Year in 2001 by Economic Ventures, and 1998 South Coast Business and Technology Award, Executive of the Year. Thanks for being here, Kathy. Jason Womack. Jason was just on USA Today's cover page for a travel log that he did, and he's got a book that just came out 10 days ago, and he's already been all over the media across the country, so the timing couldn't be much better. He works with leaders and executives. He has for 16 years in the business and education sectors. His focus is on creating ideas that matter and implementing solutions that are valuable to organizations and the individuals in those organizations. He's the author of, raise the book, Your Best Just Got Better, Work Smarter, Think Bigger, Make More. And he's explaining why working more hours really doesn't equate to more productivity. Entrepreneurs need to clarify their habits, build mindset-based strategies, and be proactive. And we're going to hear about Jason's signature workplace performance techniques. So thank you, Jason. Joe Brusesi, founder and CEO of Sprigio. He received his BA in psychology in '92 from UCSB here. After a 10-year tenure as middle grades teacher, he left the classroom to pursue an MA in educational technology from Azusa Pacific University. He was a professor in the teacher education program. He holds professorships actually at Azusa and Westmont College in the education departments. He's a published writer. He's a highly acclaimed speaker and respected authority in the fields of education and parent guidance. And it led to Random House selecting and publishing his book, A Parent's Guide to the Middle School Years in 2009. As CEO and founder of Sprigio, He brings together domain area knowledge and a solid foundation of relationship with key influencers among school districts. I actually want to paraphrase that. I'm reading it verbatim, but what he does, he's got a technology, a web-based system that helps middle school years go much smoother. Communication between principals, people that are bullying, people that are being bullied. Pretty advanced system of communication. Thank you for being here, Joe. Well, I'd like you guys to just jump in with these answers, and Paul, please chime in as well as we get into this. How often should a startup entrepreneur be in contact with their team members? Is there too much? Is there too little? What is a good format? What's a good daily practice?
You know, I'm sort of on Paul's side of this thing, is that, you know, daily contact should be reserved for people that you're actually needing some interaction with. You know, you may have an administrative assistant that you have to contact daily because you need to find out what's on your calendar and if there's been any new incoming. But if you're contacting your manufacturing manager on a daily basis to check in things, all you're doing is setting a task orientation rather than a goal orientation. So if it depends upon the job. I mean, I'll start saying this the very first. Every question you ask cannot be stated that it applies to every situation. So every individual situation differs. So whatever the talking heads up here give you as an answer, you have to modify that to what your specific situation is. So some people you're going to check in with daily, some people you're going to check in with weekly, some people you're not going to check in with, you know, except at the end of the month at the management meeting when you're checking to see if they've achieved their goals. Okay? It's all about whether you have given your employees a good understanding of what it is that they are supposed to do to make the organization successful. That's the biggest failure that I see, is that most people don't help their employees see what their connection is to the success of the organization. They see their job, they see, you know, little tasks, but they don't understand why that task makes a difference in your business. And so that's how you ought to be figuring out your check-in strategy, is what can you do to make certain that you're getting out of the way in your employees and that you're facilitating their work.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, I think I really want to echo one part of that, and that's that I never want to be the person who's standing in the way of somebody else's progress. So if there's communication that's coming and flowing through, and they're waiting on something from me, I feel like I'm the roadblock. And that's impeding not only their own progress, but the progress of the business. So I'm very responsive when somebody says, hey, what do you think about this? And it's in their critical path to getting something done. So I want that correspondence. I don't necessarily, though, want to know about every single decision that's been made unless it's in my critical path and it's holding me up. So I try and limit communication as far as email goes. You know, I have 2 kids of my own and a wife who, you know, desperately wants my attention as well. So I'm really trying to limit a lot of that communication, particularly when it doesn't really involve me or doesn't need me in the decision-making process. So that's my take on it.
A book that came to mind as Kathy, you were sharing, is that 1 Minute Manager. If you haven't gotten that for your teams yet, I'd throw that in the library. It describes those 3 people that you were just talking about. I do a lot of work in the past couple 24, 36 months with recently promoted managers. So I work with a guy went from division to region, I don't know what, on the East Coast. And we were talking about this, how often do we check in? And we were looking at the kinds of conversations he was having. We got it down to 3. He was having transaction-based conversations. He was having relationship-building conversations. And it was crisis management conversations. He actually put those things on a little Post-it next to his computer, TRC. And what he was doing is, as he was dialing, and I checked in, kept working with him, as he was dialing a phone number, he'd ask himself, is this a T or an R or a C? And a couple weeks later, I was doing my check-in with him. He actually brought this home, and he and his wife were doing transaction-related conversations Tuesdays and Thursdays. And he had 5 nights a week where it was relationship building, so they had fewer crises. I think that goes entrepreneur, corporate, and family.
So you guys mentioned knowing yourself and some of the books that you've written, and Kathy, you and I have talked about that. how critical is it? You know, you look at a guy like Paul Orfalea, who's so candid about the things that he's not good at. How much of a critical factor is it, and how do you learn about yourself? How do you have an honest view of who you are?
Yeah, boy.
Your friends will tell you.
Yeah. Well, actually, everyone will tell you. I mean, you know, Paul downplays this, but I just absolutely love his perspective. You know, you say that the dyslexia and the ADD and all of that, what that focused you on was emotional intelligence. You learned by observing. You didn't get deluded by the fact that you could read a book and understand something. I mean, you know, only 4 to 10% of our success in life is based upon our IQ. 85 to 90% of it is based upon our EQ. And so, you know, it's getting to know yourself is self-awareness, self-management. It's also no bullshit. I mean, you can delude yourself that, oh yeah, I know myself, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, okay? But your employees and your friends will tell you whether you really are. And if you have the guts to say, you know, tell me what I think. I mean, we always did 360s in our organization. I remember the very first time that I heard about a 360, and I did one on myself in 1991. Oh man, was that painful. You know, because there were a couple things that I rated myself very high on, and my employees said, nope, no way. And so we developed this thing called stupid CEO tricks. Your job as my employee is to tell me what stupid CEO tricks I'm performing today and prevent me from doing them. Get out of your way, you know, all those kinds of things. So remember that self-awareness really means true self-awareness, checking it out.
I found most of the people that I work with, including myself, we approach work from one of two angles, and for better lack of time, I would say it's noun orientation or verb orientation. Who makes a to-do list? How many of you make a to-do list? So check out that to-do list next time you have a chance. I've worked with people that their to-do list is a series of nouns. Someone's name, an event, a situation, a circumstance, something they're planning toward. And then I'll sit down with someone else, and their to-do list will be call, review, organize, handle, create. And what I've seen is people working together, one looks at a problem from a noun orientation, one works at a problem from a verb orientation. They wonder why they're not getting along. Who's ever opened an email, closed the email, marked it unread? Noun orientation. The subject is reminding you you have something to do. Who gets an email and they write down the task that needs to be done, either on their calendar or on a notepad, or post it off to the side? Verb orientation. So one of the first things that I'm looking at, and sometimes I'm the guy that tells someone, here's how you address problems. How'd you know? It's everywhere. It's all over your office.
A couple things come to mind. I think one, as a CEO of the company, you have this investment. You know, this is your thing, and even more so when you're the founder of the same company, and that's the case with Sprigio. It was an idea that I started to breathe life into a couple of years ago and got real connected to, and then I had to step back and say, if this is going to continue to grow, it can't be me. It can't be just me. And what is it that, where's the real value that I have to add to this, and what's missing, and who are the people that I need to find to add to this team? And that's where the relationship building part of this really came into play. And just a short story here, that the connection between the three of us is pretty amazing. Jason I've known for years and years, and about 15 years of a variety of different circumstances. Started a couple of companies together, actually, and longtime friends. And he introduced me to Catalyst for Thought about 6-8 months ago, maybe, where I attended and met a man named Steve Cooper, who became a very valuable asset to our company as a consultant, who introduced me later to Kathy Odell, who's now sitting beside me, who had incredible insight to share as well. And so the question I'm always asking myself is, who am I talking to? And not just asking for things, but letting them know about what I'm doing and building those relationships, because things happen over time, but you have to continue to have the conversations. And along the way, you find the missing pieces. And so that's been some of the most valuable stuff for me.
Let's take some examples and scenarios. Say you have a small company, less than 5 people, which is the case in most startups. Should everybody be involved in hiring? You know, because you're talking about chemistry.
Who wants to start?
So I wouldn't want to say yes, because I just looked over and Paul's like, no. I think it depends on who you're hiring. If you're looking at bringing on interns and you have interns working for you, then they know what's going on with that part of the business, and so why not consult them on it? If you're looking at bringing in somebody though in marketing and you've got people on your team that don't know much about marketing, then what value is there? If you're looking at bringing on an administrative assistant that's going to be working with you personally, that should be your decision to make, in my opinion. So I think you look at it, particularly in a small company, and we're a small company, on a case by case. And can the people that are working on your team add something to the conversation? Are they going to be directly impacted by the person you're hiring? And if so, ask their thoughts. But try and keep that decision-making power. I think small and relevant to the particular case. Oh, good. I got that.
Paul, you have some thoughts on this?
Well, it goes back to the theory X, theory Y. I just hired one person and they made all the decisions who worked with them. It wasn't my business to
So
decide.
you hired the main manager.
Always. I never went below the manager. But I held people accountable. But I never went out of my way to get extra work.
Right.
I want to tell you one thing. My father told me a good saying. A good salesperson sells you broke. That means you listen to your salespeople too much, you'll have too much inventory, and you won't charge enough money for it. And if your salespeople aren't aggravating the holy hell out of you, you got problems. So you've got to surround yourself with people that tell you what you don't want to hear. And I didn't have enough of those. We got too much hunky-dory as we got bigger. And I really never got enough candor. If I could have gone back, I would have insisted on more candor in the organization.
Sounds like a business opportunity. Paul's candor. I'd invest. Are there any fixes to bad chemistry or broken chemistry? And this really comes from a conversation that Kathy, you and I had with managers that weren't getting along and concerns in a very small startup environment.
It's a tough one. It really depends what's causing the bad chemistry. The story that I told Jacques about was we hired a young product manager, and he was very ambitious and assertive, and he was running out to the market and getting all these ideas, and he was bringing them back to meetings. And he walked into my office one day, and he said, "You got to fire Dan." And I said, "Why would we fire Dan? He's our best engineer." And he said, "That guy is useless in meetings. He doesn't contribute anything. He doesn't do any of this. He's just a pain in my butt. He's holding me back from getting things done." And long story short, of course, we started looking into this, and the thing was that the young product manager was a highly extroverted person who was, in Myers-Briggs terms, he was an ESTJ. He was just action-oriented, and he had to get things done, and he wanted to move, and he didn't give anybody time to talk in the meeting. And Dan, who was an introvert and needed time to process and wasn't so certain that there was a single right decision for any answer, which there never is, just was kind of paralyzed by this situation. And so in that situation, we were able to go in and we would explain to them how they each operated, create things where we said, okay, you're going to walk into a meeting, you're not going to ask for a decision, you're going to say, okay, think about it, but you've only got 2 days and you got to get back to me with an answer. So it set a time frame and expectations. In other situations where people have chemistry problems, where it's about ambition or ego or power or control, then you got a tougher problem because somebody has to want to change. And so that's tougher, and I think probably Jason would have a lot of comments on how you deal with those kinds of
There's
things.
a big debate on do we identify the strengths and say that those are okay, identify the weaknesses and build those up. More and more the research that I'm seeing right now is identify one's strengths and build the heck out of those things. And in the case of the product manager and the engineer, there's that underlying, they each had strengths, but they never had time, or they didn't have the process, or they didn't have the forum to explain those. I'm thinking about a client that I did a lot of work for down in Seal Beach, and they ran the Myers-Briggs. Anyone familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality system? All those things are great in my experience if they're taken a right way. Most of the organizations I've seen, they roll this thing out. This one company, 16 people in the team, and they wound up putting everyone's letters on their cubes. And then they passed out worksheets on here's how to talk to an ISFP. And it was a really interesting experience because all of a sudden people were using this as the crutch, not looking that colleague in their eyes and saying, well, okay, because you're introverted, let me see how that works back and forth. I like how that question kind of breadcrumbs back to the original one of knowing myself. When I did the Myers-Briggs for the first time, and my business partner, best friend, wife, that's one person, she did her Myers-Briggs. We looked at that thing and said, oh my goodness, you're not trying to drive me crazy. You can't help it. She said to me. And those kinds of things about knowing how I am in an environment. I do a ton of work on learning styles, the audio-visual kinesthetic. Listening to you, Paul, paint a picture of what you looked at and what you did and how that processed. I'll listen on a phone call. Someone will say, oh, Jason, it sounds like I hear what you're saying. Can you tell me a story about that? I'm going to back off of anything technology. I'm going to back off of anything written, and we're just going to talk stories. Where it gets really troublesome is when someone says, oh, I can't picture it. Can you show me what that means? Oh, let me tell you again. It's like they want to be shown something. I'm telling them. I was working with someone today on cold calling, and I was saying, the first thing I need to do is get them to say something so I know where to meet them. Oh, but a cold call, and then we send them an email. Well, that's going to work great for your technology visual people, but what about your kinesthetic verbs?
You're an expert in figuring out what somebody needs to hear and how they need to hear it.
Most people, and this is going to tangent, but you let me do that. Most people have identified the problem as time. I don't have enough time. I need more time. Right? By the way, this year you're going to get a whole extra day. February 29th, it's a freebie, right? What I found is the ecosystem someone builds for performance and productivity. Paul, you saying I hire a manager and then I walk away, you created an ecosystem where they could succeed. And if we get the chance, Jody and I will tell you the story of you saving her thesis and us getting that in on time. After the ecosystem comes focus. Do you work in a distracting environment? After focus comes energy. Who's ever seen someone's name in their inbox and gotten stressed? Who's ever seen a phone call on their caller ID and gotten excited? I'm to tell you, if I work in an ecosystem where there's distraction, I can't focus, and my energy's running low, it doesn't matter how much time I have in the day. So that's my expertise.
Thank you. Joe, can you talk a little bit about what a startup entrepreneur needs to do to attract financing, to attract real funding?
I think it goes back to something I shared just a little bit earlier, and that's you have to continue to have conversations with people, and not the conversations that go like, are you funding anybody this year? And if so, what kind of a business are you looking for? And, this is our niche, and you're pitching them right away. And I think people have kind of grown immune to that in some ways. I think opportunities show up when you have conversations and you talk with people and they introduce you, as I shared earlier, the connection between the three of us, it happens organically, but not unless you continue to talk to people and you tell them your story, and that story is going to resonate with some people very strongly. And the story that we tell at Sprigio, which is really centered around feeling safe at school as a child, particularly as it relates to bullying and violence, that resonates really strongly with some people, because if you've had an experience with bullying, typically it was a bad experience. I don't talk to many people that were bullies when they were younger and say, oh yeah, we want to support Sprigio. It's mainly people that have had that experience of being the target. And so that part of the story really resonates strongly with them, and they look at what we do and they say, if we would have had something like that, that would have made a difference in my life, and I want to make a difference in somebody else's life. So there's that connection. And then there's the people that know you and love you and trust you, and you're fortunate to have those people. And in this case, Jason is one of the stockholders in our company, and we've had a relationship as friends going back some 15 years. But I wasn't pitching him, when we had the conversation. He knew that this is something that I was involved with. He trusted me. He believes in what we do. But There's the people that really like you and enjoy your time in your company, and they love your ideas. And I think that's where it's got to start. And then you continue to look at what you need as a company to grow. And you start to have conversations about that and how you're growing the company, and it naturally attracts people to you. So that's our experience, and it's not everyone's.
Yeah,
And Kathy, you raised
I've-
53 million.
I've raised a lot of money over time, and you know, I keep saying that one of these days somebody's going to hire me for a company that doesn't need to raise money. But I think that some of the really critical things is having done this so much and having helped people, even when I'm not the one raising money, but I'm advising them on how they raise money, is for all of you in the audience that are starting companies. There is this great entrepreneurial misconception. Oh, I've got a great idea. If you just introduce me to that rich person who lives in Montecito, they're going to invest because they have a lot of money and therefore they'll give it to me. Okay? That is not how it goes. Big investors take money and they invest in the stock market on things, on fundamentals, okay? They're running the numbers of what they're doing. If people are investing in small companies, they're investing because they believe in you, okay? They believe in what you're doing, like with Joe's company, with other companies that I've been with. You connect with somebody and they say, I get it. I really do get it. And I trust you, I trust the management team. And so every conversation counts, and you have to have a pitch, you have to understand how the investor's going to make money. That's the other thing is entrepreneurs tell me, oh, well, it's a great, fabulous product, it's going to save the world. Okay, but why does the investor want to invest in it? They can put their money in the market, they can buy real estate, not anymore, but well, actually probably right now may be a good time to buy real estate. But it's, why would they choose you, okay? What are you giving back to them that's important, okay? So it is about the envelope, the cash envelope, return on investment. But it's also something about, at the angel investment level, about connecting with you. So have the conversation. The pitch is secondary. If people are interested, they will come to the table.
What does an investor do? I think that's the biggest thing that the entrepreneurs that I work with haven't put themselves in the mind of an investor. If you read one book, and I do book recommendations all the time, so bear with me, but The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. It is the Bible. If you're an analyst working for Goldman's, you are given this book and you're expected to know it yesterday. Value-based investing, what does that mean? I would study Buffett. Just go to YouTube and just listen to him. What rocks Buffett's world? And anything by Michael Lewis. Some of you probably saw the movie Moneyball. That's one little thing that Michael Lewis does. But what these three guys have done, in my estimation, is they've shown the world, Buffett maybe more than anybody else, here's what I'm looking for. And if you can do that, then you can speak my language. But what does an investor do? I think that to me is something that's missing out there. They don't know their world. Can you go to lunch with a couple of investors before you're going to ask for something from them?
Paul, you didn't take outside capital, but it had to have been presented to you at times.
Yeah, I never took them.
Yeah. So
Got these pea brains from New York, and they took it. They went into the business and I couldn't imagine people. You know what a chemist is?
I saw Inception. There was a chemist.
No,
I didn't go to sleep.
It's on television, so I can't use it. But they know how to take money and turn it into fecal matter. There's a lot of investors out there that know how to do that, or are business people. And you got to take accounting. There's so many different ways, if you don't know thoroughly how a balance sheet and income statement work, to fudge in your numbers. There's not a truthful item on a financial statement. I remember December 31st, I'd have to tell the people, don't write checks to date them January 1st so we'd show more balance in the checkbook. As a private business, I would write off any bad debt as soon as possible. I wanted my inventory off the books as fast as possible because I didn't want to pay income taxes. These big public companies, they can't wait to go on FIFO accounting That's pays more money in taxes. But if you just look at the financial statement, look at the footnotes, you could tell somebody knows what they're talking about. And I love accounting. And I'll tell you one thing, if you all don't thoroughly embrace accounting, you're gonna have problems.
I've been reading some statistics about pivoting, about startups pivoting. I'll read a statistic and get some feedback here. And let's define pivoting too when you answer this. But startups that pivot once or twice raise 2.5 times more money, have 3.5 times more user growth, and are 52% likely to scale faster, more likely.
Who made the most money in the gold rush? The guy selling shovels. Who made a lot of money? The guy selling gloves to the guys buying shovels. So that's what I see. The need presents itself. The idea gets me in. And then there's going to be that, my mentor Rao talks about the unanticipated product. What did I make? And then what does the market let me know they actually want of what I made?
And so pivoting means shifting.
Yeah.
Shifting on the fly.
Yeah.
And talk about the opposite of that. In other words, if you've got a vision, you believe in, you're passionate about where you want to take your business.
No child left behind.
How do you detach from that to pivot?
Well, I think that's one of the things that, when working with startups over a number of years, that the most toxic startup entrepreneur is one who is solely locked to their vision and can't see anything else, okay? Because there is no battle plan that ever survives its first encounter with the enemy, okay? So, yes, you need to have a vision and you need to know where you want to go, but if you're moving in that direction, like a flight plan or something like that, if there's weather in your way, you're going to go over here, you're going to pivot over here, you're going to move this way, and maybe if you find out that somebody just dropped a bomb on the place that you were going, you might decide you're going to change directions. Okay, so no, you don't want to do that willy-nilly, but you have to understand what life is putting in front of you. Okay, the market doesn't respond the way we want it to. Every business plan is a fallacy from the day it gets written. The discipline to put it together, says great, but you have to be able to say, where do I need to shift, where do I need to change? And unfortunately, a lot of entrepreneurs that I look at just say, oh, no, I know I'm right, this is where we're going, this is how it's going to be. You looked at it, Paul, and you're going, well, I opened the newspaper today, there's an opportunity over there, there's an opportunity over here. Now, don't take it to the other extreme, don't get crazy. If you lose your plan, you're just hop, skipping, and jumping all over, whatever gets thrown at you today. You're a firefighter, not a business person. But that's, I think, what I read into the pivoting thing. Are you willing to pivot when circumstances, reality shows you should, or whether an opportunity opens up because you were heading this direction, you go, oh, look what I found. The shovels and the gloves and for the coal mine. You have to be able to see those things.
Paul, you just went into this with Kinko's. You felt it was going to work, right? You didn't validate the market? You didn't do market research?
No.
Okay.
I did market research. People think I'm very improvisational. I took a lot of inputs to figure out this damn business, and I visited every damn competitor on earth, so I knew intuitively. Now, what is intuition? You fall in love with a woman here, you don't love them here, you get a stomach ache here. You fall in love with a woman here, you don't love them here, you get a stomach ache here. It just comes from here, your stomach, you know it. It's your intuition. It takes a lot of input for me to make a decision. I look impulsive, but I use a lot of inputs, and you just know it. But you know it intuitively. And unfortunately, men, more than women, don't trust their instincts. And I'm going to tell you a little story about my wife, Natalie, ex-wife. She told me the best stock market advice. A woman bought Colonel Sanders stock. You know why?
Why?
The lines were long. You know when she sold it? And the lines were short. That's intuition. You go down to the shopping center and you go, wow, I look at the financial statement, this Gap looks really good to me. But it seems like Lululemon has all the customers. What stock did better? It's not that mysterious to use your eyes and see where the customers are going. And I don't know how they do it on this computer, but evidently it camouflages vision.
Today, these startups, the ones that don't do market validation or enough of it, they burn 4 times as much capital in the first year on average. So, there's got to be some place for market validation.
I know what that means. It's your checkbook, or you get the deposits that validating.
Well, they kind of go into a sector or they start selling to a market that they haven't even evaluated.
They don't know their sweet spot. You're right. A lot of people don't know where the money is easiest. Most people don't think easy and simple. It's always easier to make money easily. Find out what you do best and go after the easy thing.
Yeah. How many middle schools are there in the country, Joe?
I'm going to go with about 75,000.
So do you attack all 75,000 at once? How do you go about it?
The shotgun blast. You just let it loose. Education it's a unique niche, and this kind of goes back to the last topic. Jason reminded me of 4 very crucial letters in education. NCLB. And for those people who have kids, you probably have heard this. It's No Child Left Behind. And that's, somebody who's took their first career in education, that's putting your blinders on and heading off in a direction with no possibility of movement in either way, except towards that destination. It's not really a vision, it's just a destination. And vision for me is a direction that takes you towards a destination, but allows for a little bit of movement. So hearing that, jump in.
The validation piece that I would like to hear you talk about is, why did you think Sprigio would work? That's where I think we can go.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it was a little bit of intuition. It was knowing what I know about kids and have spent a lifetime working with kids, working with people in education, knowing what that sales cycle is like, that it's like a glacial pace. And the guys that work for us on the team know that now as well. Some of them are here with us. But if you understand that and you know that building relationships is crucial, then that helps you to understand how to approach that. So we very much focus on building the relationships with the people that we know and the people that love us, and understanding that their referral is a sale for us. And so that's how we approach it.
What about premature scaling, which is the idea that you're actually growing too fast and slowing back down? Let's talk about Kinko's again as a case study.
Answer for that.
Okay, tell us.
What happens in this country, and it's why the tax code is so screwed up, at the end of the year, you have a bunch of growth, you got more receivables, you got more inventory, you got more leaseholds. The government says, oh, that's really cool. I'll take all your cash away in income taxes. It's impossible. Sometimes you grow 50%, you're going to outstrip your cash. So it is very important. You grow too fast, the Uncle Sam comes in and wipes you out. It is not a friendly bunch of people over there in the tax collection agencies. But if the government really wanted to do something, they would improve depreciation schedules. They give you a credit for the increase in receivables. Let you keep a little bit of the cash you might build up. But you can definitely outgrow your capital. And you'll end up every 3 months of the government taking up all away from you, your cash balances.
I think that the other aspect of that is, are you outgrowing your systems and processes? If you say, oh, gee, I can grow 150%, but you aren't equipped to handle it, then you're just dooming yourself. You're going to find yourself in a cash problem. You're going to outstrip your inventory and receivables, because that's what drives most business, is funding your inventory and receivables. And it's simply, a math problem, an accounting thing. But if you don't have the systems and processes in place, there's nothing you can do to overcome that. You could raise a whole bunch of funding, but you're still going to fail, because the market will turn around on you and not buy your product if you're not servicing them well.
Paul talks a lot about sparkle in the eye of the employee, and he made that a hallmark of how he managed. And I Paul, you want to talk about that before we extend the
I sold
question?
my business to those bozos in New York, and they were all like Harvard types and Yale, all these like Ivy League people. And we were at dinner, and they said, what's your biggest competitive advantage to me? And I go, well, it's a sparkle in our workers' eyes. And the people around me at the table looked at them, and they go, oh, well, this guy's a real drug addict from California. But it really is the only truth you have is a spark in your workers' eyes. And you want to hear a good story? Do you want to hear a very good story? It's this month. I go to can I indulge you? So these guys are from Harvard, Yale, obviously the big shots, de la creme de la creme. So you mentioned the best day of the year. Every 4 years we have a cool day in the calendar. What's that called? Leap year. What's that really called? Owner's Day. Because you pay everything by the month. That extra sales is all profit, marginal profit. Now, I go to sell my business. These bozos in New York see February at leap year, and they go, wow, you're having a good month. Then March comes in, and because March after leap year, it skips 2 days. Like the weekend days would be weekdays. Now, if you're going to go buy a retail store that you'd count Saturdays in a month, wouldn't you? Well, ours are weekdays. So I go to sell the business. March has weekdays. It does very, very well. Now, you know God sometimes decided to die on the cross in March or April. It's just some decision. I don't know why he decides to die March or April. If he dies in April, that's bad because that's better for my business because March, I don't have that Easter. So these bozos don't realize God's death, extra days, and all of this. And then every 4 years, they've got a real cool thing called elections. Do you think you just might get the idea? There's an election, people might Xerox and make posters, especially when all the primaries move to March 4th. So March comes up. I get these bozos up $20 a share. You could have asked anybody in the field and they would say, April's going to be a bad month. But no, they ought to talk to their heavenly bodies. They would never talk to an earthly person like this. So I got them up $20 a share, and then all of a sudden I got my check April 4th. It was the first negative month we ever had in growth.
Paul, you built a good company. I'm sure they've gotten their return.
No,
by now.
they got it, but they didn't know what they were doing. I had to sit there. If you sell your business, get the hell out. Don't let them. They'll cut the tail. Cut your tail off an inch at a time. You can't work in a company you sold. Just get out. I had to sit there and endure painful little deaths every day. And I can tell you, it wasn't that I didn't know how to delegate. It was just that they generally didn't know what they were doing.
We've got time for a few more questions from the audience for anybody on the panel. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's cash, accounting, and cash.
Yeah.
So we all know that our schools don't teach this. And so my question for you is, how did you get your understanding, intuitive, deep understanding of cash and accounting, and then how do you translate that to your kids?
Oh, I'll give you the first one. My kids have absolutely no money. I got them so frugal. And when they were young, they were 6 years old, I'd take them to the stockbroker and they wore their suit. And they knew I was serious about saving and managing your money. You have two choices with a child. They can either be good in school and become a doctor or a lawyer, or they better be good with their money. But you better make sure your child is good with one or the other. Now, I didn't have too many choices but to be good with my money because I didn't think the school thing was getting me anywhere. And I just knew cash flow from seeing my father. It's all about managing your cash. I mean, these bozos in New York, I can't begin to tell you. this company called Enron goes broke. So they get the people from the J.P. Morgans and the pinstripe suits, and they're in Congress, and they go, oh yes, we trusted their numbers. Then they finally got a guy like me out there and says, well, I couldn't understand the cash flows. How do you know your own life? You know it from your bank statement. You see this, the balance beginning, this is the end. What happened in between? Isn't that the only way you know your business? Your checkbook? The GAAP accounting is a bunch of nonsense. You know your business from your checkbook. You don't understand the cash balances. So I've always been a cashaholic. And that's probably the thing that people don't understand the least. And I'm going to go back to this. Envelopes. Know your business on an envelope. And I saw these guys, Gergens or somebody, and they told President Clinton on his, they said he should get an envelope and write on the back of an envelope 3 things he wants to run for re-election on and stay true to those 3 things. Envelopes. Don't think in computers, don't think in memorandums, think in envelopes. I'm very serious. If you don't know your cash on the back of an envelope, you don't know what you're doing. And if you ask an executive to tell me your cash balances and when they're going to be projected, and they don't know, don't invest money on them. They don't know their variable cost, don't trust them. And very few business people really understand what variable cost is or what their cost of goods sold is. And if you want to invest in a business, you go in there and look at their chart of accounts and say, oh, you need 400 chart of accounts? Well, you could only need a few chart of accounts. But they have subcategories because they love to have little subcategories of chart of accounts. They're utilities. Isn't that what I want to know? Well, if I want a subcategory for telephone bills, that's nice. But in my financial statements, I just want to know utilities, don't I? Know your chart of accounts, simplify your accounting, and guess what? They always bring up this. Oh, you make money, it's only on paper. And I go like this, and I go, what does this feel like? I mean, the financial statement is what? It's money. And if you like it like I do, you'll love financial statements.
We have partners like Scheinfeld Center here in town, and of course City College and UCLA extensions, so UCSB extensions, and they all have these good accounting classes to get brushed up. So it's probably something to explore.
Yeah, if you love accounting,
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Melissa's got a question in the back. Yes.
Thanks for the plug, by the way, because we do teach accounting to entrepreneurs. I'm not sure I can articulate this very well, but bear with me because it's something I've been thinking about hearing from the interview with Paul and the panel. But I'm thinking about the evolution of leadership, and we're talking about, effective management and how it used to, 30 years ago, autocratic leadership was sort of the way of the world, and now we've evolved into sort of developing these open cultures and these comfort zones for employees and happy employees with sparkles in their eye. And yet I'm also hearing about the closed door policy because we've evolved into this culture of constant interruption, the most toxic, I believe, of which are meetings. And so how do we reconcile that sort of new way of leadership, working shoulder to shoulder with your employees, and yet not wanting to be interrupted all day long?
Well, you see, the problem is management and owners. I'm an owner. An owner doesn't need to be there. An owner points fingers. And I'll tell you my problem. It comes from my sexual dysfunctionality. I don't have enough fantasies to entertain myself in a meeting. I don't know if that answered your question, but owners only make a few decisions, and the only purpose of an owner is to fire the CEO. Only purpose of a board of directors is to sell the business or fire the CEO. I was an owner. I pointed fingers, I set up financial statements, and they made the boxes. I'm serious. There's no reason for them to interrupt me, and I knew how to get out of work really well. If they come to you with a problem, you go, tell me your solution, I don't want your problem. Now, what do you want me to do on this? You start throwing it right back at them. They know how to solve their own problems. 99% of the time, they bug you about nonsense. So close the door, don't let them interrupt you, let them all figure it out themselves. They like themselves better anyway. And they'll always bug you. Every subordinate wants to get your advice. They'll ask you a stupid nonsense question. And you know, they knew damn well the answer.
So, having been around in, 30, 40 years, in leadership, it has changed, okay? And so the idea of the CEO as the commander-in-chief and dictator and all of that kind of thing has definitely gone away. And there was this huge swing towards, we're just going to be open and friendly, okay? One of the things I was telling you, my 360 thing that I found out years ago was that I was a very open leader, and I wanted to make certain that all my employees had a sparkle in their eye and that they all loved work and all of that. And so we had a very team-based environment. Everybody was involved in decisions, and I would consider everybody's view. And even to the point where sometimes if somebody would come to me after a meeting and say, Joe didn't present this in the meeting, and we should consider that, and I'd go back and I'd say, oh, you're right, you have a point, okay? And so on my 360, what showed up back in the 90s is that everybody loved me. They thought I was fair and open and all of that, and I was indecisive. Okay? Oh, duh. Okay. So, what there's some balance here, and I don't know what it is. It's like being a conductor. Sometimes you have to let the woodwinds play, and sometimes it's the flutes, and sometimes you have to have disharmony. I'm not quite with the walk out of the room and don't do anything, Paul. I'm sorry if I'm not going to agree so much with that, particularly with startups in this day and age. But it's a balance, and understanding what your role as a conductor and guide and keeper of the culture and all this, and which role you're playing when. Be very, very clear about that.
I think for us, it's pretty simple. You listen to what people have to say on your team. It doesn't mean that you always agree with it, but you let them know that if they have an idea, they can share it with you, because some of the best ideas you're going to get are from the people on your team. But if they don't think that they can come and share those with you, you're not going to grow in some ways. I think the other big piece of it is you have to recognize what people have to offer. Everybody wants to know that what they've done to help the business has made a difference. And sometimes that recognition is something very simple. Hey, I appreciate the work that you did, and look at the impact that it's had. And it's just somebody kind of taking notice of what you've done. It's not always an attaboy, but it's letting people know that what they're doing has led to something that's changing in the business, and that they do make an impact. And I think when people know that they are a critical part of what your team is doing, they want to stick around. They're not just somebody you can replace and then bring on somebody new. So for us, those have been two really critical pieces.
Of course, and Melissa, thank you for that question from Santa Barbara City College. You got to let people know where you're from. Can you teach entrepreneurship? And I got on the plane 2 weeks ago, I think, and as I was sitting down, my cell phone started ringing with text messages and pictures and emails, and about 8 of my friends had snapped a picture of a Wall Street Journal article that morning about what Rice University has been doing now for a couple decades. But as part of their MBA program, you start a business. You start a business as your MBA program. You don't study business. That comment, and then Melissa, the other thing that I'm thinking as I'm sitting here, what you just said was, I think leadership is a word that our generation is imposing on the next entrepreneurs. I don't know if they use that word.
Theory X, theory Y, you go back to school and you start organization behavior. You're running the military. That's a Theory X organization. You're running a bunch of university professors. That's Theory Y. Now, sometimes you got the velvet glove and the steel fist. I had both. I had to be arbitrary and I had to be prodding. Now, if you're designing an airplane, you say to this little section of the airplane, the control section of you got this much space to work with. Those people will argue with all the other people and say, well, I can't do it in this space. I want a little more space. But that's task-oriented. Now, there's a difference between being an owner and a manager. it sounds to me that these startups are all management intensive. That's not the job I'm good at. I'm an owner. I'm not a manager. If you guys gotta separate your roles. Are you the owner? Are you operating your business as an owner? How much do you separate your business from you? That's the critical thing. It's very intoxicating, your business, and being important. But separating yourself and getting a perspective is critical. I'll tell you another one. You take marketing, understand the 4 Ps, you go to business school. And unfortunately, I went to business school. I learned a great deal. I never got anything higher than a C, but I really learned a lot. But do you remember the 4 Ps of marketing? Price, place, product, promotion. Can I tell you my last story? I got 2 stories, if you want to hear them. My biggest problem in business is I was dealing with people who were task-oriented. There were 3 and 4 workers in a store. I had to take these people to 24 hours a day, 40 and 50 people in the store. These people knew a lot about things. The managers that ultimately became successful knew a lot about people. And you got to ask yourself, am I a master of things or am I a master of people? You got to ask yourself every day, do I have to eat my alphabet soup alphabetically? Don't employ people. Be content with whatever you want. If you want to deal with a bunch of uncertainty, employ people and have all that anxiety. And if you can't handle it, don't employ people. But do you know you have to, when you start your business, you're probably on things. At one point, you're going to have to be motivating people. Know yourself on that one. So that's my first story, and you want my last story? Our business started with the 4 Ps, price. The business I left was the highest priced person in the block. I became a product-based business. And what's better to be in business? Raising prices and your customers don't care, or always worrying about costs going lower prices? Wouldn't you love to have a business you can raise prices anytime you want? We left that kind of business. And it's very hard to change your Ps and positioning of your business. And that's why you talked about pivoting. Well, look at them. These are all very critical things. How do you reformulate your business, reposition yourself? If you wake up with yesterday, always, you're never going to see tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Joe Bruzzese, Kathy Odell,
Thank you, Jock.
Jason Womack, and Mr. Paul Orfalea. Thank you.